Alabama defeated Mercer 52-7 this past Saturday, and it was a wild day across the country and across the SEC, making the conference championship race that much more chaotic. Let's dive into it on this edition of the Pigskin Cafe.
Welcome to the Pigskin Cafe, a podcast where Hampton, Chase, and Graham break down all things college football. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
They had to win this game.
There's a problem. This one's tough.
We are back.
That's what my gut's telling me.
I genuinely could not believe it.
You don't live in the great state of Texas.
All right, big boy. Hold my sweet tea.
What are we doing?
That is a stat there, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome back into the Pigskin Cafe. My name is Hampton Sipper, and usually I am joined by Chase and Graham Haney, but I let them have the weekend off because, frankly, Alabama absolutely destroyed the Mercer Bears, and there wasn't a whole lot to dive into from this game. But there are still a few takeaways that we're going to talk about here today on the show, along with a few other critical SEC matchups that happened this past Saturday, with Florida upsetting LSU, South Carolina storming back against Missouri in what was a very wild, very fun game, and also Georgia makes a statement in Athens, beating Tennessee 31-17. But before we dive in to talking about Alabama defeating Mercer and the rest of the action, I want to remind you, if you're listening for the first time, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're on our way to 200 subscribers. Our last video did great. We appreciate all the support, appreciate all the outpouring of love that we have received this year. Continue to hit us up in the comments with your thoughts on the episode and your thoughts on college football as a whole. We love interacting with you and continuing to grow our Pigskin Cafe family, so be sure to do that and go ahead and follow us on social media. With that all out of the way, let's dive in to Alabama defeating Mercer in what was a pretty standard game. Alabama was favored big in this game, and they did what they were supposed to do. They handled their business very professionally, very quick-like, and I just want to talk about a few takeaways that I had from the game. Defensively, let's start there. I think, again, another game in the cap, another feather in the cap for this unit. They continue to get better and better. Granted, they had so much more firepower than Mercer did. There's no doubt about that. But I think a guy like Jahad Campbell is continuing his superior level of play. He's been on an absolute tear these last three games, starting with the Missouri game, LSU, and now Mercer. And he's playing himself into the first round of the NFL draft this April. He has been absolutely outstanding. Thought he played well. Thought James Smith continued to be a very disruptive presence around the football in the backfield, making plays. Clay Russaw got him another interception. Very athletic play by him. Kind of as he's falling down, catching it with one hand. I thought he played really well and filled in admirably for Q Robinson, who is now out for the year. Bray Hubbard had another good game. Xavier Brown ran a fumble all the way back for a touchdown. Just overall, a really, really good day from the defense. I really don't have any complaints. They gave up one touchdown, which was, you kind of have to tip your cap to the Mercer quarterback and the receiver there. Good throw, good catch. And other than that, they really didn't threaten Alabama at all at any point in the game, other than a few penalties on the first drive that kind of prolonged it. But I think overall what you're seeing from that unit is just more confidence in the scheme, more confidence in what is being asked of them, which results in them playing faster, playing more decisive football. And honestly, they're just playing a lot more physical than they were at the earlier portions of the season, and also even the midway point when there were a little bit of hiccups with the Vanderbilt game, second half of Georgia, and even some parts of the South Carolina game, even though I would argue they played pretty well against them considering how well South Carolina is looking right now. So defensively, continue to stack, continue to build and improve. And I think by the end of the year, I mean, we're getting to the point now, I would argue they're one of the top 10 to 15 units in the country with the way they're playing. They continue to get turnovers. They got another 3 this Saturday. And that's the winning formula right there. If you continually give the offense more opportunities by taking the ball back from the opposing offense, you're going to win a lot of games that way. So really impressed by them, really impressed by Kane, LaMichael Womack, and his unit. Now, for the offense, Sorry, spilled a little bit of my drink there. Can't ring my big mouth, I guess. Jalen Milroe had a really good game. Kind of took what the defense gave him. Again, Mercer did not offer much resistance. I thought some of the play designs that were incorporated in the first couple of drives with like the jet sweep to Ryan Williams for a touchdown. There was one play in particular where they kind of snuck Dupree across the formation, kind of moved the defense right with motion, then threw back to the left. Thought those were a couple of nifty play designs that I think Alabama's putting on film that they can build off of and kind of do something different in upcoming games and catch defenses even further off guard. So I think that was very deliberate by Nick Sheridan and staff. I thought, Milroe had a good day throwing the ball. I thought all the backup quarterbacks came in, played well. Ty Simpson had a couple really good throws. He had the kind of a magical play, escaping pressure, then heaving it up to Josh Cuevas. The only thing I would say with him, I thought he was very accurate. I thought even the two balls to Jared Hamilton, they should have probably been defensive pass interference. I thought he made good throws on those, and I think Kobe Prentice, the one he threw to him, it looked like he got kind of bumped on his route and threw off the timing a little bit. The only thing I would say that he really needs to work on is sometimes he tends to bail right, like escape right a little bit too much and too frequently. And when you're kind of the first team guy, you're going to be the QB1, teams are going to catch on to that tendency. But I thought he played really well. For the most part, I thought Austin Mack had a heck of a throw to Rico Scott in the end zone for a touchdown. And overall, I thought the offense played really well. Again, it's a concern that I continue to have. The traditional running game for Alabama isn't good enough right now. I'm looking at the box score. Leading rusher for the game was Jalen Milroe, 6 carries, 43 yards. They only rushed for 189 yards for the whole game, averaging 4.5 yards per carry. Against Mercer, that's not great. And, we talked about last week on the show when they played LSU, Jalen Milroe rushed the ball great, but the running backs, they didn't have a lot of success on the ground, and that continued into this week. And I'm just kind of afraid that that's never going to come around for Alabama this year. It definitely doesn't seem like it. But what's interesting to me, and I'm going to look at the stats real quick again to back this up. It kind of seems like when the backups get in the game, and again, stats really don't back this up all the way, but they kind of run the ball a little more effectively than the traditional first team unit. And I think a guy like Richard Young, I said it last week, I'll say it again. He deserves to get carries with the first team offense. I think he brings a different burst and a different physicality that Alabama is lacking right now at the running back position. And I think they kind of need a boost from there, because if you can add that element to what already is a really potent rushing attack when Jalen Milroe is kind of doing his thing with the QB designed runs, and you add that other element that defenses have to prepare for, I think it makes Alabama a lot more difficult to stop. Because right now, I just don't think Justice Haynes and Jam Miller, they're not playing bad, but they're not maximizing or elevating. That's a better word. They're not elevating plays. Like, they're getting what is expected, but they're not getting really more of what is expected out there on a certain play. And I think that is something Alabama needs to look at. And again, I know playing running back, there's more that goes into it than just simply running the ball. You have to be able to pass protect. You have to be able to know your assignments and be counted on and be dependable in that manner. But I just think Richard Young, he just looks and I get he comes in later in the game, but he looks different running the ball. It's a noticeable difference. So that is the one I would say negative on offense for me. I thought the offensive line played well, and I think for the most part they're generating pretty good push. But again, when Jam and Justice get out in the open field, they're not breaking many tackles. So that is kind of my thoughts on the Alabama game. They've got a big test going to Oklahoma this next weekend. I know probably many of you out there are like, well, Oklahoma's like 5-5 at this point. I wouldn't really consider them a big test. And I agree. I don't think Oklahoma's a great team, but they played Mizzou tough. They've really battled in many of the games that they played this year, and their defense is really good. And I think the type of attacking defense that they play at a hostile environment in Norman, Oklahoma, playing at night, they're coming off a bye. I don't know, man. It kind of has a little bit of a struggle type game feel for Alabama, just with kind of all the elements aligning. So I'm going to be interested to see how the Tide play when they go to Norman this upcoming weekend, and we'll talk about that on the show next week. Move on. Let's start with Florida and LSU. I want to talk briefly about that game. I felt going in that Florida was going to win this game with DJ Lagway coming back, because I would argue, since he has been inserted into the lineup, they're playing like a top 25 football team. And I know that sounds crazy because they're 5-5, but the level of physicality that they're playing with on that offensive line, being able to run the ball, has been super impressive. And they've not done it just against, a UCF or a Kentucky. They've done it against Tennessee, who I would argue has one of the best defenses and one of the best defensive lines specifically in college football. And they kind of continued that yesterday. LSU, I think, made a concerted effort to stop their running game, and they knew that DJ wasn't going to be as much of a threat with his legs due to his injury. But they popped one right at the end with Jaden Ball, who is going to be an absolute dude in year 2 and year 3. He's already really good now. But that was a big win for Billy Napier and company. I mean, they hadn't beat LSU, I think, in the past 5 or 6 years. And the way that they did it, I mean, LSU ran 92 plays, Florida ran 43. They almost had equal amount of yards, and Florida won the football game. And I can't say enough good things about DJ Lagway. The kid is so advanced to be so young. I mean, the play that they had before they scored not the final touchdown, but the touchdown before the final touchdown, where guy comes off the edge, he steps up in the pocket, keeps his eyes downfield, throws a 30-yard strike. I mean, that is junior, senior level type quarterback play. And not only that, he has that in his arsenal, but also when a team blitzes him, he knows where to go with the ball to vacate or to throw it into the vacated zone. He rarely takes sacks. He rarely throws it in harm's way. I think he's just a really good player who next year is going to be one of the premier quarterbacks in college football. And I can't give enough credit to Billy Napier and that staff. And I say that because even though they're 5-5, that team has never quit on them. Even as bad as it looked early in the year, they have turned into a very tough, very physical football team who, it isn't always pretty, but they are always fighting, scrapping, clawing, whatever they have to do to win the game. And great win for them. Now they get to welcome Ole Miss into Gainesville this upcoming Saturday, because that schedule doesn't really lighten up. And now on the LSU front, this is Brian Kelly's 3rd year in Baton Rouge, and they're sitting at 6-4 with the chance of losing another game to Vanderbilt. And I know everyone probably may not think that is a reality, but Vanderbilt could absolutely beat this LSU team, especially the one that has played the past 3 weeks. And their past 3 losses, all 3 have been by double digits. It's simply not good enough. Not with the talent at his disposal, especially in the state of Louisiana. And I think the most glaring thing to me is that LSU has always been known for defense, but they just simply do not have dudes on that side of the ball. And then offensively, Garrett Nussmeier, I think, has been pretty good for most of the year, but he's become a turnover machine. That offensive line that was supposedly one of the best in the country has become a turnstile at this point, giving up a lot of pressure. He's constantly under duress, and they can't really run the ball very effectively. So if you look at Brian Kelly in its totality, his career at LSU, that first year, I'm telling you, and I said it on this podcast, him beating Alabama, I think, dramatically shifted the perspective that LSU fans have of his time in Baton Rouge. I mean, if you take, and again, you can't take wins off resumes. I'm just saying that year in particular, even though they got to the SEC championship, they got blown out 2 or 3 times that year like they're getting blown out this year. And then last year, they had a prolific offense with Jaden Daniels, who's now tearing up the NFL. Malik Neighbors is as well, so is Brian Thomas. But you had a defense that was hot garbage, and now this year your defense is incrementally better, but your offense is taking a dramatic step backwards. The only thing that you really have going for you is you got Bryce Underwood coming in, who is the number 1 quarterback in the 2025 class. So I think that kind of hope is what Brian Kelly can sell this fan base on, but it's simply not good enough right now at LSU. There is no excuse and no reason why they should be 6-4 with 2 games left to go. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason in Baton Rouge because he completely overhauled his defensive staff last year, and now I don't know what his magic button or his magic bullet is this upcoming offseason. So great win for Billy Napier in Florida. You got Ole Miss coming in. Hopefully you get a big, maybe keep that one close. I mean, that would be another massive upset, another massive win under your belt if you can knock them off. But LSU's got to go back to the drawing board and get things figured out in a hurry. Now let's shift to another big game of the weekend. Georgia playing Tennessee. Georgia wins 31-17, and they kind of showed that championship pedigree. They showed what they're made of when they were backed into a corner. They come out, Tennessee jumps on them. It's 10-0 early, and then Georgia goes on and outscores them 31-7 to end the game. Carson Beck, I think, played his best game since the second half of the Alabama-Georgia game. He really got comfortable, really got in his zone. They attacked those seams against Tennessee. The tight ends were huge, especially Oscar Delp. I thought Arian Smith had a good game. I thought Dylan Bell did before he got hurt. But I thought what you saw was Tennessee's defense is really good, but their secondary is very vulnerable. And that's why Georgia threw it 40 times, and that is why Alabama, going into that Tennessee game in Knoxville, they came out with a pass-heavy attack because they knew they wouldn't have a lot of success running the ball, but that they could have some success through the air. And Jalen Milroe just didn't take advantage, but in this game, Carson Beck did. So big win for Georgia. Now they take care of business against a no-name next week, and then Georgia Tech on the final weekend of the year. They're going to be in the playoff, and they're going to be a tough out because, again, championship pedigree, a quarterback who is experienced, and a coach who has been there on the biggest stages and knows how to win in those type of games. Masterful game plan by him. And I thought Tennessee offensively looked better. I thought Nico played pretty well, other than the fact he's just very, very inaccurate at times, and it really limits their offense in key critical moments when you're on third down and you got a guy open and you just overthrow him over and over and again. It's hard to win that way. I think he's going to be better next year, but he's still I don't think he's at the level right now where they can win a championship with him in 2024. So big win for Georgia. Tennessee is still fine. They're still in the playoff contention as long as they take care of business against UTEP and Vanderbilt in the final game of the year. Final game that we're going to talk about, probably the game of the day, is South Carolina, Missouri. South Carolina got out to a big lead, 21-6, going into halftime, and Missouri just kept battling. I think you saw that the bye week for Missouri came at a great time for them. Brady Cook came back, and you saw the type of team they are when he's actually healthy. I don't think they're an elite team by any stretch of the imagination, but they're much, much better, obviously, than when Drew Pine is playing quarterback for them. And they did not come off a bye week. Excuse me on that. They played Oklahoma last week and won in a heartbreaker, so they were kind of backs against the wall and just came out fighting. And, they have fourth down on South Carolina's side of the field, convert a fourth down touchdown to Luther Burden. He makes an incredible one-handed catch. And then South Carolina comes right back down the field. Lenore Sellers makes some incredible plays. He had a great day, threw for over 350, had 5 touchdowns. And I think that team is one that I wouldn't want to see them right now. They are really peaking at the right time. Their defense, especially that pass rush, is ferocious, and their offense has found a little bit of an identity. And Sellers keeps growing game to game to game. I can't imagine what he's going to be next year with a full year of starting under his belt. They've got a lot of weapons. They've got a lot of talent, and Shane Beamer and that staff deserve a ton of credit for the job that they've done in Columbia, South Carolina. Valiant effort by Mizzou, heartbreaking way to lose, but that game was just incredible. It was back and forth, two teams competing their butts off for it was a big win for either program, whoever came out on top, and South Carolina now has a chance to finish the year at 9-3, which is probably going to be their best year in maybe a decade. This would be a monumental season for South Carolina. So they got probably a no name left, and then they got Clemson in the final game of the year. And with that, I think that covers week 12 of college football, week 12, week 11 of college football. We got a heck of a weekend coming up with Ohio State and Indiana playing, Ole Miss and Florida, Texas and Kentucky, Alabama and Oklahoma. Colorado has another big one. How about Colorado coming out, destroying Utah? They're firmly in the mix for the Big 12 championship, especially with BYU going down to Kansas. So they're arguably the best story in college football this year, them in Indiana. Going to be a fun weekend. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Like I said, we appreciate it very much. Leave a like on the video. Hit that notification bell so you know anytime a new video drops here at the Pigskin Cafe. And we'll be talking Alabama, Oklahoma next week, but the Pigskin Cafe is going to be closed for now. But until next week when we're recapping Alabama versus Oklahoma, chew on.